Welcome to online WHS training tutorials. In this training tutorial you will learn how to enter a hazard, assess the hazard and implement a control measure using the online WHS hazard register. Now that all the basic data has been entered into the system via the starter kit, you will need to start identifying, assessing and controlling hazards in your workplace. The first place to look to identify hazards is the activities, plant equipment and chemicals that you've entered into the system, as well as the place of work. So, what is a hazard? A hazard is anything with the potential to cause damage to people, the environment, property, plant or equipment. Identifying hazards in your workplace is one of the major factors in complying to legislation. You can find the hazard register in the risk management section. When a hazard is first logged into the system, it appears in the register as red. You can also set email alerts to warn one or more people that a hazard has been logged. See the tutorial on how to set alerts. When a hazard has been assessed, the register turns to orange, and after a control measure has been developed, the register turns to green. The register will also turn back to red when the review date of the hazard is due. Some hazards might have already been recognised previously, and you may have even already introduced control measures. If so, these hazards are a great place to start. Select the Add New Hazard and enter the hazard into the system. If you haven't previously identified a hazard, an example of identifying a hazard would be during the starter kit you may have entered the activity of forklift use and also entered forklift in the plant and equipment section. Forklift use comes with a variety of hazards, but the main hazard you need to identify is collision with pedestrians. So select the Add Hazard link and the hazard form will appear. Hazards can be related to a site, an activity or machine that are already in the database. Enter the hazard collision with pedestrian. If you related the hazard to an activity, the hazard in this cell will also appear in the safe work method as a perceivable hazard. Complete the rest of the form. You can also assign responsibility to review this hazard. By entering the first initial of an employee, it will actually highlight all the employees with that initial. You can even upload a picture of the hazard into the system. Once you have logged a hazard, the register will turn to red, and you will notice that there are two red crosses. Select the Assessed red cross to open up the risk assessment page. By selecting the Add New Type link, you can add a new type of hazard category. To assess the risk, we use what's called a risk matrix. Select on the icon and a risk matrix will appear. Don't be afraid of the matrix, as it's easy to use if you follow the basic principles of how it works. The risk matrix works on the key principles of likelihood and severity. So what is the likelihood of the hazard causing an injury? And if the injury occurred, what would be the severity of that injury? You have identified the hazard as collision with pedestrian. Work your way across the top of the matrix and ask yourself the following questions. Is the hazard very likely and could happen anytime? Likely could happen anytime? Unlikely could happen but very rarely? Or very unlikely could happen but probably never will? So out of these four likelihoods, what would it be for a forklift colliding with a pedestrian? Well, it depends on how much you use the forklift. If the forklift is used every minute of the day, then the answer would be very likely. If the forklift is used only once now and again, and not every day, well, the answer may be likely, could happen sometime. So now you have determined the likelihood, you now determine the severity, which is the easy part. Work your way down the matrix asking yourself, if the forklift hit a pedestrian, would it kill or cause permanent disability or ill health? Would it cause long-term illness or serious injury? Or would it need medical attention and several days off work? Or would only first aid be needed? Well, I would say if you got hit by a forklift, it would probably kill you or give you a permanent disability. So now all you do is match up the number coinciding with the likelihood and severity, which rates this risk as a number 1. Complete the rest of the assessment form, including a person responsible and a due date. Once the assessment has been completed, the hazard will now turn orange in the register. The person responsible to undertake the control measure for this hazard then selects the control red cross. This brings up what is called the hierarchy of control measures. This is nothing new, it's all Australian standard and very easy to use. What you need to do is work your way down the 6 control measures, asking yourself the question. 1. Can this hazard be eliminated? Well, the answer is no, we still need to use that forklift. 2. Can it be substituted for a lesser risk? Well, again, no, we still need to use that forklift to lift our heavy objects. 3. Can we isolate the hazard from the person? Well, yes we can. Here you can enter in the text box that the control measure would be designated walkways and maybe bollards at entry points. Keep working your way down the control measures, as sometimes there can be more than one control measure implemented. 4. Can we minimise the risk through engineering means? Well, yes you could. You could add a hazard light that flashes when the forklift is in use to warn people of the danger. 5. Implement change through administration means. Yes, again, there is no use having a designated walkway or flashing lights if the employee hasn't been inducted in their purpose. Therefore, put in the text box, employees to be inducted into designated walkways and flashing light procedure. And the final control measure is PPE, or personal protective equipment. No PPE is going to stop a forklift, but you could have your employees wear bright vests when in the warehouse so they stand out. So let's include vests to be worn in the warehouse at all times. Once this process has been completed, set a review date for the hazard, then select the Add button. The hazard register has now turned green. When the review date is due, the item will again turn to red, and email alerts can be set to warn you when this occurs. Each time you have reviewed the process, a log is kept, showing your efforts in hazard management. By selecting the View button, the system has also developed all the data entered into a document that can be printed out and used for educating your employees. Identify all your hazards and undertake the risk assessment process and develop control measures to ensure that these risks don't occur into accidents. Make sure to induct your staff into these control measures and procedures, as a control measure implemented without inducting your staff is basically useless. And finally, develop a checklist using the checklist builder of the hazards identified and the control measures implemented to show a history of your efforts in hazard management. This checklist should be undertaken on a regular basis.